Hi, I'm Mark Lane, and my wife and I moved to Normandy, France after my career as a museum director in San Antonio, Texas. I had an interest in World War II, and eventually I became a guide for private groups on the D-Day beaches. That interest morphed into a master's degree in World War II studies at Arizona State University and World War II Museum in New Orleans. As you can imagine, I had thousands of tours and I covered practically every aspect of the war all over the world. One of the stories I like the most is this particular one because it greatly ensured the success of D-Day. I like to quote Adolf Hitler. At the beginning of the war, he makes this very strong statement warning all of his officers that the British were masters at deception, and he inadvertently proved it. One of the reasons for that is the Nazis have sent about 24 spies to Great Britain. British catch all of them. One of the reasons for that, the Poles broke the code and the British were able to take that broken code and find out what the Germans were planning. They capture all these 24 or so spies. They turn a number of these spies. 5 of them turn out to be excellent in giving that information back to the Germans. What they've concluded is that because this is such a rare phenomenon that you're able to capture all the spies and you can feed information back to the Germans, and you know what the Germans are thinking because you are reading their mail, so to speak, you start trying to support the most important single thing that's going to happen for the rest of the war. We know that as D-Day today. For them, it was Overlord. How do you do that? Well, number one, they found out that the Germans expected an invasion at Calais, which is the closest place to Great Britain. It's across from Dover. It's only 20 miles. And I used to have lunch with a guy that swam it, but he didn't have that much fun. He only did it once. So they fed that information that yes, indeed, the real invasion was going to happen at Calais. So Hitler put most of the defenders, the very best defenders, in Calais. Now, here is the second part of the story. The British have found out that Hitler is fascinated with Norway. Why? Madison Grant wrote a book called The Passing of the Great Race. It was kind of an intellectual stir of his age. Hitler read that book and wrote a letter to Madison Grant and said, "Your book is my Bible." Well, the crux of the whole story of The Passing of the Great Race was that the German race, who Madison Grant calls the Nordics, from Scandinavia and more particularly Norway, are the origin of all great world civilizations. Egypt, the Phoenicians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, everybody comes from the original German inspiration. Of course, we historians know that has no basis in any kind of reality, but Hitler loved the idea and he espoused exactly the same thing, and now here's somebody highly educated in America had the same idea. So he wrote this letter and said, "Your book is my Bible." After the war, German officers often said Hitler, for some reason, was always obsessed with Norway. Now, what did they do with that information? The British created 2 fake armies. The first fake army was placed exactly where you would expect it to be, and that's in Dover, across from Calais. And the second invasion army was in Scotland. Why? The area across from Norway is in Scotland, so that was where the preparation for that invasion was. The British created the idea that right before the real invasion in Calais, there's going to be a fake invasion. That fake invasion is going to be so big that the German defenders on the ground are going to be calling into headquarters and saying, "Send the reinforcements right now. This is where it's happening." And that's exactly what unfolds. So they build this fake army in Scotland and another fake army in Dover. How do they do that? How do you make a fake invasion? How do you create a fake army? Well, fake armies have been around since the days of the Romans. The Germans used fake armies in North Africa, so the British had to make fake armies better than anybody had ever faked an army in the history of the world. How did they do that? Well, first of all, they created the radio traffic of 1.5 million men preparing for an invasion. So they did that with guys in the back of trucks riding around the area of Dover and the area around in Scotland to broadcast that kind of information that the Germans would detect and pick up, say, uh-oh, something big is happening here. Also, if a spy they haven't captured, which was possible, or a reconnaissance airplane that the Germans sent over possibly could fly over where these fake armies were. If they had, they would have seen field after farmer's field packed with inflatable tanks, inflatable trucks, sheeps and ammunition dumps, anything that was being used for preparing for an army. And they were happening in two separate places. On top of that, a detail that I think is brilliant, if a plane flew over at night, they would see the forest packed with little small fires equivalent to 1.5 million men camped in the forest. All this together created a comprehensive story that was very convincing to the Germans. So when the real D-Day happened, it unfolded exactly the way the British plan called for it to be. The biggest fleet in the history of the world is coming across the bay. The defenders are calling into headquarters and say, from horizon to horizon, there's this enormous fleet. We're being attacked. Send all the reinforcements here. And Hitler says, no, I know where the real invasion is going to be. This is a fake invasion. He keeps all the defenders in Calais, and more importantly, he keeps 250,000 to 500,000 men in Norway who never fire a shot. So 2 armies you don't have to fight are armies that don't exist as far as you're concerned, as far as an attack goes. So that is one story among many thousands that I love to tell about World War II.